So a bit ago, I did a video talking about what is an NDA, why do you sign them, what is it, how do they go good, how do they go bad, what's involved there. So continuing in that vein, because you asked for it, not because it's necessarily popular, but it helps explain some parts of the process. What is a master service agreement? Let's talk about that. Hey everybody, this is Perch talking contracts in comic books, which is maybe boring to many of you, but I know there's some people who enjoy it, and that's what it's all about. So, talking about what is an MSA or a Master Service Agreement, or as it's about to be called, I think this will take a while, but they're going to be calling this a Main Service Agreement instead of a Master Service Agreement because of racism. I don't know what to make of it. So, I mean, I've lived with these terms for a long time, so I don't know that that's any reason to keep things the way they are. Of course not. I mean, if but the renaming of certain things based on kind of current racial situations feels like it injects race into things that are um, not where they belong, or not. Anyway, it's a funny world. Anyway, master service agreement in particular, it's a master agreement, and the idea is that this is a all encompassing. It's an agreement that is going to live beyond any other agreement. Now, some comic creators have gotten MSAs, and they believe this is an ongoing contract with a publisher. And that's true on one hand, legally. It basically means once this agreement's in place, it's very easy to sign new agreements or new contracts with a company or with an individual because you basically do a one-page addendum or a statement of work, we'll get to that in a moment, to go off of this MSA. The idea is that the MSA covers all of the kind of prevailing language, things like where rights are concerned, and it creates a lot of default language that then doesn't need to be reiterated in every contract. Lawyers like this because they can get a template MSA or a standard MSA, is another way they often say it. They get that signed by somebody, and then when they do future work, they only have to deal with a few small details. It basically means it's a quicker legal copy. It's just faster for everybody when it's done that way. Now, and employees tend to like this too, and this is kind of a little bit of the trap because employees get tricked, or workers get tricked into saying, hey, if you sign this MSA, then good news, it means that it's going to be really, really fast to just get your contracts done. It means you get paid faster. Those are all good things. You don't have to hire your own legal attorney to go through every single page. You just have this MSA. And in many cases, companies bait the employees a little bit by promoting the fact that this means you've got an ongoing contract with a company. Now, some comic publishers, not naming names, but ones, well, Marvels, they use this often. They use this quite a bit, and I see comic creators, including big name comic creators, reference the fact that they have an MSA, and that means they can never be removed from Marvel. That they're there forever. That they have a lifetime contract. Well, number one, most MSAs do have expiration dates. Many of them use language like automatic rollovers, which means unless somebody purposefully goes and they terminate the agreement just, renews in perpetuity until somebody actually shuts it down. Now, this is a bit of a game for contractors where it sounds like you're really getting something as a contractor working for a company. If you have an MSA that automatically perpetually renews, it feels like, hey, this big company, they're not going to remember to go and cancel my contract, and it'd be a bunch of work to cancel a contract. So this means I have a lifetime contract. And that's true on one hand, but it's not as valuable as you think because the MSA rarely defines payment. The MSA rarely defines actual work. The MSA is defining a bunch of terms in which you will live on when you do work. But the actual work itself is done through individual statements of works or amendments or contracts that reference the MSA. So why does all this matter? Well, it means that sometimes, and not Marvel here, but I've seen smaller companies do this. they will basically say, hey, we'll sign this contract for $200 a page with you. Or you can we'll go through a little bit more trouble. We'll do an MSA, but then you got a lifetime contract, and we'll pay you $175 a page, so a little bit less. But then you have a lifetime MSA with us. Then you're always in our system. You're always there. And I've even heard it pitched. I was able to silently be on a call with a creator as they're being pitched this. They're really working hard. Like, this will give you yeah, you'll take a little bit less money, but then you're guaranteed to get more work with us. And the answer is, if that ever went to court, lawyers would jump all over that word guarantee, because if there is no guarantee, quite the opposite. The MSA is just establishing paper. And there's, back during the kind of mid 90s, late 90s, a bunch of comic creators had MSAs, but no work from the companies. And that's because the companies just figured out, hey, I can get this template MSA out. It's got a bunch of things there. I can go sign it with a bunch of different creators. And then when I need people, it's very easy for me to tap them and get a project done. But, only 1 out of 20 people they were signing this MSA with ever got additional work. It was a bit of a game. So, and by the way, as I'm saying this, I'm not suggesting you refuse to sign an MSA. An MSA is a valuable piece of paper. It is helpful. But there's a couple things to watch out for. First, as I mentioned, it's not a guarantee of more work. It's just legal language that's getting established that, in theory, will make things go faster when you do more work later. But the other thing to watch out for is you're basically signing an agreement with the, especially if it's in perpetuity, which is always billed as good news for you, it's actually better news for the company, because they will define terms that maybe years later you may not like. Let's say you get very popular. Let's say that your career takes off and suddenly you want more ownership or more rights. Well, now you're going to have to go renegotiate your MSA, which is very difficult to do. Companies don't like to negotiate their master service agreements, because these are intended to be the same for everyone. And in fact, some companies, DC and Marvel among them, have certain creators have clauses that say, if you renegotiate the MSA for somebody else and it's favorable, then I, as a previously signed contractor, I automatically get the benefits of whatever this new MSA is entails. So this means that when companies change their MSA, they may be changing it for you, they may be changing it for tons of people. So they're very, very reluctant to do it. And so in general, but when the shoe's on the other foot, if the company gets into hard straits, or for whatever reason the company wants to change the MSA, then they basically come to you and say, hey, we want to sign more work with you, but we've updated our MSA, so you need to sign it so we can keep paying you. The leverage is all on the company's side, not on the employee side. So the terms that you're signing off for with the MSA, you are going to have to live with. And that's one more reason why you really do want to get a lawyer to very carefully look over what it is you're signing, particularly when you have any kind of umbrella agreement or master agreement or anything that's going to be referenced by other contracts. So let's say you have signed that MSA, and the MSA typically contains things like, here's where ownership will sit of content. Here's what merchandising looks like. Here's some basic definitions of how payment's going to work, that payment's going to be structured in this way. Here's where, indemnification, if the company gets sued or the employee gets sued, you're pledging to indemnify them against, any kind of other penalties or damages. It's got a lot of kind of groundwork for what can happen in this case. The one that a lot of comic creators are probably going to be looking out for most is around ownership. The other one that often gets tucked in there is around privacy and non-competes. Now, this is a little bit of a nasty trick, but in many cases, the MSA does contain elements of a non-compete. Now, a non-compete is basically where, if you are doing work for, say, Marvel, and DC comes and says, hey, we'll give you double the money, come work for us, you can't accept that contract unless a certain amount of time goes by. The non-compete will say, you pledge to, not work for any competitor for 30 days or 60 days or 1 year or 5 years. Now, it's worth mentioning that non-competes in general are getting thrown out when they go to court. And a lot of companies know this, but they keep putting the non-compete in anyway. Can you guess why? Well, it's because they're daring you to go sue them. They're basically, And in many cases, and Disney does this famously, they'll sign a non-compete with you. Their non-compete is not binding in court; it would never hold up. But they want to put just enough fear into you that if you are thinking of going to get work somewhere else, you'll think twice. And if you do, their legal department can send you a really nasty letter basically telling you, hey, you signed an NDA, or, not an NDA, you signed a non compete as part of your MSA. And, we're going to have to look into it legally. And that threat alone is enough to scare a lot of people off. And it works that way all the time. So in general, you definitely want to be looking for non-compete language, and non-solicitation language is the other one. Now, what's non-solicitation? That's basically where you would say, hey, hey, Brian Michael Bendis, you work for Marvel. And if you leave Marvel and you go off and you start to work for our competition, DC, then, you can't be directly or indirectly responsible for any other Marvel people going to DC. If we catch you basically, promoting that DC content, that promotion, by the way, can be really lightweight. It can be as simple as, Bendis calls up Matt Fraction. Well, Matt Fraction wasn't, but Bendis calls up some guy at Marvel and says, "Hey, what's DC like? It's really nice. They treat me really well over here." Strictly speaking, if you go to court, even that can be seen as solicitation. You're talking positively about a competitor, and that can be, making that situation look favorable with the intent to poach. Now, here again, it's a case where if it goes to court, it's very hard for companies to prove non-solicitation unless you left a smoking gun behind you of emails or other things. But once again, the threat of going to court, dealing with lawyers, dealing with all that stuff is usually enough to crack anyone from doing it. That's why it's there. So the MSA is, we talked about the NDA. The MSA is a much nastier contract. Typically is a lot longer, a lot more language, and there's a lot of pieces in there that are basically, the MSA is designed to help the company. It's not designed to help you. Now, it may help you by creating a nice framework in which you can get more business faster, and that's a nice benefit. But the MSA really is there for one purpose: the company. It's the company defining the terms in which it wants to work, and that's that it's on their terms, their ground. And so you do want to be a little careful with what you sign and how you sign it. MSAs are getting more popular in comics, and the other thing that I'm seeing more and more is some people have shared some contracts with me, which you're not legally supposed to do. So I keep your secrets, but keep that quiet. Somebody sent me a contract, and then they posted like on Twitter, like, "Yeah, I sent Perch over that contract to look at." It's like, dude, don't do that. don't put that in ink. You're generally authorized to share contracts and things with legal representation, not goofy YouTubers who are giving you half-baked advice. By the way, everything I'm saying, of course, if you're in this situation, go get checked out by an actual attorney. I am not an attorney. I don't pretend to be one. And if you think you're getting legal advice from like, who's that, Nick Rakita or any of those people, I mean, they can give you information, but that's also not an attorney. If you're talking to somebody on Twitter about legal language or watching YouTube videos about legal language, you're not talking to an attorney. You may be getting some legal advice, but that's not talking to an attorney. And the courts will see it that way if you get pushed on it. So just get actual legal representation. Plug number 1051 for have a lawyer if you're doing contracts. But at any rate, I'm definitely seeing a lot more MSAs. I'm also seeing more language around non-competes that are very broad. So once upon a time, non-competes in contracts would say things like you cannot go work for Marvel, or you cannot go work for DC. And they kind of, the non-competes were very narrow and very specific to companies. Now I'm seeing a lot of contracts saying things like you will not work in the periodical business, which is, whoa, that's way broad. That's not just comics, that's anything. In fact, I saw one lawyer making the argument that the periodical business entails anything that's shipped on a regular or irregular schedule for the purposes of consumption, which can mean video games or shows or arguably no court would see it this way, but you could argue food. fits that category. So just be a little cautious of that stuff. MSAs, please get the stars out of your eyes. When the MSA is pitched as you have a lifetime agreement, that's them pulling a con on you. And I've seen a lot of creators, including really big name creators, including one I did a video about just a couple days ago that everybody was beating up on this guy. He often brags about having a lifetime contract. You're talking about an MSA. That's not what you that I don't that's not what you think it is. I'm just saying it's not quite what you think it is. It's different. Work is still done by spec. Now, if you're lucky and you have an MSA that pays you an ongoing retainer, good for you. But those are quite rare. And if you get one, just be very thankful that you have that unicorn and move on. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, do you have any questions? This one MSA is. I hope that at least at a basic level kind of answered a few questions on it. It's one of the agreements we often talk about. But if you have any more, leave comments below. I'll do my best to answer it. Otherwise, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, follow me on social media. Just don't send a contract there. And thanks for listening.